Anytime you want me to stop or have a question or whatever it is, just raise your hands, okay? Keeping it very informal. It's always, I thought, very unfortunate that today's style of teachings, teacher talks, you write a few things, and then that's the end of it. So much is lost in that. You have to argue with the teacher, you have to ask questions, you have to say something, then have a dialogue, a conversation. I'm very hopeful that the West can slowly begin to learn that tradition of having 15 minutes of teaching and then 2-3 hours of conversation on that subject matter. That's the way to learn Buddha Dharma. Then today it's very different. Sometimes I think, what are we doing? Talk. I especially, I do this the whole day, I think whole year. And so every day, 2-3 hours of my saying something, and sometimes I think, what do they hear? How much do they hear? And what do you do after what you've heard? You know, this is sort of not such a good thing. It's good in some occasions. Now, having said that, there have been certain places where I've said it and then suddenly everybody raises their hands and we can never finish a subject matter at all, and then the conversation goes on. But I think it's very important to have discussion. Our mode of training is based upon discussion and answering your questions and being able to question it without hesitation, because it's all about working with your mind. Buddhism cannot be taught by rubbing you with Buddhism every day. You know, you have to be able to understand it. And so stop me, ask questions whenever you feel like, okay? Now, Nagarjuna's works, the first one being the collection of anecdotes, or also called collection of stories. Very important subject matter. For you who are studying, all of you who are studying Buddha Dharma, always keep in mind why we enumerate these things, why we mention these things is for you to understand the world of Buddha Dharma. If you don't understand Buddha Dharma's world itself, you get into an idea where you relate to Buddha Dharma as a religion. There is no harm in relating to Buddha Dharma as a religion if that is what is most helpful to you. Many people do. But on the other hand, as I said, if you believe in Buddha Dharma and you think that that is sufficient, then it won't work. Buddha Dharma is something that you have to believe in. But that belief should never be coming from somebody else telling you it's worth believing. You have to always make sure that the belief is based upon reasoning and your research. And a belief cannot be called a belief until it becomes certainty. And certainty can never be poured into the hearts of another person. It has to be developed through research and analysis and questioning until it becomes a certainty. However, if the certainty arises, that certainty is useless until it is then manifest in your attitude and in your conduct. Therefore, if you take these 4 steps, you really have to sort of hear it, some sense, or we call it belief, but it must make some sense to you. That making sense to you must be researched until it becomes certainty, and then the certainty must manifest. If it is manifesting in your attitude and your conduct, then that can be called believing in Buddhism. If it is not manifest in your attitude and conduct, no matter how much you say you love Buddhism or you believe in Buddhism to be true, it's always debatable. In order now, however, that it becomes a confident certainty that is manifest in your attitude and your conduct, you have to really put in the effort to reasoning, to analysis, to examining, to checking it in your own mind whether it is true or not, to really develop that belief into a certainty. And in order to be able to do that, you have to hear many things, you have to research, you have to listen, you have to study, you have to really go through the whole process, the processing part of it. And in order to process it, you have to have the help of many different approaches. The approach of Buddhism in the West is very good. On the other hand, it's a little bit haphazard. It's not very well structured. And so it's a very free style of teachings where people have jumped into Dzogchen or Mahamudra teachings, sometimes Mahayana teachings, sometimes this teaching, sometimes that teaching. And then there's a little bit of reluctancy to Vinaya teachings. So for some reason, the West has this whole attitude of don't tell us about discipline, don't tell us about moral conduct. These are not the most appetizing subject matters. And there's a sort of falling in love with a few subjects. One is space. They love the idea of space. Well, the other one is mindfulness. Then the compassion is very popular. And then, of course, emptiness is also a subject that is more close to your heart. Now, what happens is, although these are all depending upon how you receive it, depending upon how you are taught, they're all very helpful. But what does happen is a little bit of disorganized view comes in the mind of the people. So if you tell people to be ethically correct, for example, very oftentimes people will say, oh yeah, but everything is empty in nature. And you've gotten so many instructions on emptiness of phenomena and emptiness of self. You've gotten the instruction, but you've not really realized it. But one doesn't think that way. One thinks you've gotten the teachings and you know about a certain thing, and you let that go into different areas where it may be most important that you actually practice those teachings. And so when we say something such as let go, people very easily have very strong connection with it, and they say, I should let go. I know this, I should let go of anger, I should let go of attachment. But on the other hand, that letting go may be not really pure. That letting go may be very manipulative letting go, breeding laziness instead, or breeding non-awareness instead. And so instead of a genuine fruition of letting go, that letting go itself may be actually harboring your ego more, or actually protecting your own neurosis a lot more. These kind of situations happen when there is no clear understanding of the view that you are working with at this mind. And so we say, very conveniently, we switch from Vajrayana view to Mahayana view to Hinayana view, wherever it is convenient to us. And since the certainty of the view is not there, one doesn't realize the potential that you are working with at this moment. One doesn't understand the ground basis, the foundation that you are standing upon that needs to be transcended or transformed at this moment. So it's very important for meditators increasingly today, as you learn more about Buddha Dharma, to have correct understanding and of a structured view so that the progressive stages of understanding is what you are truly taking to heart. Knowing that it does not, sometimes we say, when you begin from the basics, it doesn't mean you've been demoted in some ways. You know, I thought I was Vajrayanist, now I'm being told to come back to something else. Doesn't and shouldn't be taken as a demotion, but should be taken as a much more honest approach, because this whole system of training is based upon having the courage to realize absolute truth. And that truth cannot be realized if there is no honesty in the mind of the meditator. That truth has to be realized with honesty, and therefore to be honest with what ground you are standing upon is a much more realistic approach that will bring about greater and quicker fruition. And knowing that even if you discover that you are in the very lowest of the potential at the moment, knowing everything is impermanent, everything changes from this basis to a very higher state of realization doesn't need to take a long period of time. It doesn't upon the duration of time, it is always dependent upon the courage of honesty, the courage of truthfulness, and how much you can really work with truthfulness within your own self. Therefore, it is said, homages itself relay the correct understanding of the view that one is working with. Homage identifies which stream of teachings you are receiving. And so here it says, Vinaya, if the teachings are connected to the Vinaya, homages are always made to the omniscient one, to the Buddha himself. If the homages are made to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then it means that these are sutra teachings. If the homages are made to Manjughosha or Manjushri, then it means that the teachings are connected to the science of mind and logic and reasoning and Abhidhamma form of teachings. And therefore, seeing the homage, a Buddhist meditator must immediately know, oh, this is a sutra teaching, or this is a Vinaya teaching, or this is an Abhidhamma teaching. That awareness must be there in the minds of the meditators at all times. This allows you to say, oh, this is a Vinaya teaching. It's going to teach about what to do, what not to do, what to abandon, what to cultivate. And the approach I must take here is to be able to really take the teachings as instructions, very direct instructions, without giving into sort of emptiness at this point, or what is the nature of sort of space and so on and so forth. And so knowing the structure and then being able to train accordingly allows the meditator or the mind of the meditator to reap the fruitioning of the teachings, the fruit of the teachings, much more clearly. Suhita Lekha, or the letter of Nagarjuna itself, is then beginning with homage to Manjughosha or Manjushri himself. And therefore, immediately, it's all about, of course, it has all the different teachings that are there. It's a sutra or Vinaya, both are also Buddha's teachings, but mainly, since it is an Abhidhamma teaching, it is all about reasoning, examining within your own self.